Good morning, everybody. I see we have a group here ready to go. I'm going to give a couple of minutes still for anyone to send out some last-minute invitations before we get started. Today, our reading material is Cash Flow Quadrants by Robert Kiyosaki. So send out those last-minute messages. Anyone who wants to join us, I'm going to have the text on the screen. So even if someone doesn't have the book, they'll be able to follow along right away. I'm sending out a couple last messages, so I'll be right back. Good morning, good morning, good morning, wherever you are, whether it is 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time or 6:30 a.m. West Coast, Pacific Coast time. Good morning and thanks for being here. I sent out a bunch of emails. Hopefully you're doing the same. And as we like to start off our weekend on Saturday mornings, we share a book amongst us business owners, whether you're self-employed, part-time, full-time, but it's a great opportunity for us to dive into some great business books, share a little bit about what's going on, different perspectives. And so hopefully everyone came here with a copy of the book. If not, I'm gonna about to put it on the screen to share it. And I'm gonna take care of that right now as we're speaking. For those of you who have your paper version of the book, we are starting chapter 5. I know that we read a couple of pages in there. I want to do a quick recap just so that everyone and anyone who's joining us now. So right here, we're on page 95 of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrants. And by the way, just a quick recap of chapter 4. First of all, Jameson Rowe, who was our reader last week, did an outstanding job of reading chapter 4. Some great insights, some great participation. And if you remember, chapter 4 were the 3 kinds of businesses. And just as a reminder, there's the traditional, corporation type of a business. And that is a business that you can acquire it, you can start it, but I would tell you that that is probably the most challenging way, is to start a business or run a business and create the system. Because ultimately, what a business is a system, a repeatable, scalable system that once you get it up and running and have other people working in that business, you can take the hands off of the steering wheel and the business continues to operate because it's a system. The second kind of business was the franchise. Now, the franchise already has a system, a proven system that was tested out, operating, and now it allows you to license that system and then go do that business somewhere else, but the system is already in place. So the number of businesses proportionally versus the corporation and the franchisees have a much greater chance of success, better than 50%, whereas a traditional company has a less than 50%. In fact, 80% of businesses are out of business within 5 years. And then the third type, okay, and by the way, it was interesting in the reading that the Jameson did, is they were talking about when franchises first were introduced, many people thought they were a scam. Many people thought that would go around saying that they were illegal. Today, franchises are in every town, almost on every corner. So the third type of business is another evolution of systems in place. Now, the issue with franchises is there's a large upfront investment. Then came a system that, similar to franchise system, is a proven system, already working, already operating, but the barrier to entry is much lower. Oftentimes, a couple $100 gets you into that business. And then your job is not only to build the business, but to build the organization itself. So that was our chapter 4. It's really focused on the 3 types of businesses and focusing on the idea that a business is a system. And Robert Kiyosaki goes on to say that not only is it a system, but it is a bridge. It is the bridge to financial freedom. So now we pick up on chapter 5. And in chapter 5, we're going to talk about 5 levels of investor. Just as you remember, the 4 cash flow quadrants is the top left is the E, employee. The bottom left is the S, self-employed, which is really an employee just at a higher level. A little bit more independence, but still no leverage. On the right side of the 4 squares, in the top corner, is the business, which is what we talked about last week. And this week, we're going to talk about the bottom right corner, which are the investors. And ultimately, if there was a place that you would rather be exclusively, to the exclusion of all the other ones, is to be an investor where you have assets that create the income that allow you to live and you have complete time freedom. So getting started here again, page 95 of the book, Investing is the Key to Financial Freedom. My poor dad often said, investing is risky. My rich dad often said, being financially uneducated is risky. Today, most people know they should invest. The problem is that most people, like my poor dad, believe investing is risky, and investing is risky if you lack financial education, experience, and guidance. Learning to invest is important because investing is the key to financial freedom. 5 things happen to people who do not invest or who invest poorly. They work hard all their lives. Number 2, they worry about money all their lives. Number 3, they depend on others, such as family, a company pension, if those even still exist, or more often the government to take care of them. Number 5, the boundaries of their lives are defined by money. Think about that statement right now. Is the boundary of your life defined by money, i.e., what you can afford, where you can afford to live, what you can afford to drive, the clothes you can afford to wear, the restaurants and the food you can afford to eat? Is that really your boundaries? And that's the whole purpose of this whole conversation, is how to erase those boundaries, or at least to set those boundaries out wide enough where you're fulfilled. Number 5, people who do not invest and who invest poorly, they will not know what true freedom is. Case in point, Rich Dad often said, you'll never know true freedom until you achieve financial freedom. And by this, he meant that learning to invest is more important than learning a profession. He said, when you learn a profession, let's say to be a doctor, you learn how to work for money. Learning to invest is learning how to have money work for you. The moment that you have money working for you, you have your ticket to freedom. He also said, the more money you have working for you, the less you pay in taxes if you are a true investor. Learning to invest. My rich dad began preparing me for the I quadrant at the age of 9, using the game of Monopoly as a teaching tool. Over and over again, he would say, one of the great formulas for wealth is found in the game of Monopoly. Always remember the formula: 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. The game of Monopoly, by the way, put a 1 in the chat if you have played Monopoly. I just want to know if there's anyone out there that has never played Monopoly. Put a 1 in the chat if you have played Monopoly. The game Monopoly is a game of cash flow. For example, if you had 1 greenhouse on a property you owned, you received $10, and that was $10 a month in cash flow. 2 houses, $20. 3 houses, $30. And the red hotel, $50. More greenhouses and more red hotels mean more cash flow, less work, less taxes, and more freedom. A simple game, but an important lesson. Rich Dad played Monopoly in real life. He would often take his son and me to visit his greenhouses that would one day become a big red hotel right on Waikiki Beach. As I grew up and watched my rich dad play the game of Monopoly in real life, I learned many valuable lessons about investing. Some of those lessons are: investing is not risky. Investing is fun. Investing can make you very, very rich. More importantly, investing can set you free from the struggle of earning a living and worrying about money. In other words, if you were smart, you could build a pipeline of cash flow for life, a pipeline that would produce cash in good times and bad, in market booms and market crashes. Your cash flow would increase automatically with inflation and at the same time allow you to pay less in taxes. And I'll share with you that that is so true. And in the world of real estate, for example, that is exactly true. 4 greenhouses equals 1 red hotel. The cash flow that comes in, that's money working for you. That's money generating more money. And the beautiful thing about real estate, for example, and owning a business really in the same token, is that over time, that real estate or that business is going to grow in value. The cash flow will grow, and oftentimes uh, outgrow inflation. So what we're reading here is really practical information. So I'm not saying real estate is the only way to invest. I use the game of Monopoly simply as an example of how the rich get richer. A person can earn income from stocks via dividends, from bonds via interest, from oil, books, and patents via royalties. In other words, there are many ways to financial freedom. Financial experts. Unfortunately, due to a lack of financial education in schools, most people blindly turn their money over to people they believe are financial experts. People such as bankers, financial planners, and stockbrokers. Unfortunately, most of these experts are not really investors in the I quadrant. Most are employees in the E quadrant working for a paycheck, or self-employed financial advisors in the S quadrant working for fees and commissions. Most experts cannot afford to stop working simply because they don't have investments working for them. P.S. Isn't it fair when you're looking for a financial expert to help you manage your money? Isn't it fair for them to show you what they invest in? Ask them. I would never use a CPA, for example, that didn't also invest in real estate, because he only knows the theory, not the practical, number one. And even more importantly, I would say, is that they don't believe in being an investor. And if you believe what we're talking about here in the book, that's a mismatch. So, Warren Buffett said, Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls Royce, get advice from those people who take the subway. It's a great analogy. Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls Royce to get advice from people who take the subway. If people do not have sound financial education, they cannot tell if a financial advisor is a salesman or a con man, a fool or a genius. Remember, all con men are nice people and oftentimes very charismatic. If you were not being nice by telling you, if they were not being nice by telling you what you want to hear, you would not listen to them. There's nothing wrong with being a salesperson. We all have something to sell, yet, as Warren Buffett says, never ask an insurance salesman if you need insurance. When it comes to money, there are many people desperate enough to tell you and sell you anything just to get your money. Interestingly, the vast majority of investors never meet the person taking their money. In most of the Western world, employees simply have their money automatically deducted from their paycheck, the same way the tax department collects taxes. Many workers in America simply allow their employer to deduct their money and put it into their 401k retirement plan, possibly the worst way to invest for retirement. And that's a true statement. I'm not even going to get into the whys of that, but well, 401k plans go by different names in different countries. In Australia, they're called superannuation plans. In Japan, they're also called 401ks. And in Canada, they're known as RRSPs. I say the 401k may possibly be the worst way to invest for retirement for the following reasons. 1, Time magazine is on my side. Time magazine has run a number of articles over the years questioning the wisdom of putting so many people's retirement at risk. Time has been predicting that millions will not have enough money to retire after a lifetime of turning their money over to strangers. And we see that all the time. In fact, people are numb to the comment, and when you think about it, it's terrible that my 401k plan became a 201k plan, and people laugh about it. But do they laugh when they have no retirement? A typical 401k plan takes 80% of the profits. The investor may receive 20% if they're lucky. The investor puts up 100% of the money and takes 100% of the risk. The 401k plan puts up 0% of the money and takes 0% of the risk. The 401k company makes money even when you lose money. Reason number 2, taxes work against you with a 401k. Long-term capital gains are taxed at a lower rate of around 15%. But the 401k gains are taxed at the ordinary earned income tax rate of around 35%, the highest of the 3 types of income, which are ordinary earned, number 2, portfolio, number 3, passive. If you want to take money out of your 401k early, you'll have to pay an additional 10% penalty tax. Reason number 3, you have no insurance if there is a stock market crash. To drive a car, I must have insurance in case there's a crash. When I invest in real estate, I have insurance in case of a fire or other losses. Yet the 401k investor has no insurance to prevent losses from market crashes. You have to think, isn't that interesting? Number 4, the 401k is for people who are planning to be poor when they retire. That is why financial planners often say when you retire, you'll be taxed at a lower tax rate. They assume your income will go down in retirement into a lower tax bracket. If, on the other hand, you are rich when you retire and you have a 401k, you could pay even higher taxes at retirement. Smart investors understand taxes before investing. Just taking a quick look at the comments. By the way, thank you for those of you who put a 1 in the chat who have played Monopoly. So out of 15 people, only five, me included 6, have played Monopoly. I'm going to tell you later on, I don't know if he's going to mention it, but Robert Kiyosaki developed a board game similar to Monopoly, or I should say in the same vein as Monopoly, but more realistic. And that was the reason. So it's an educational board game. And back when I used to have a mortgage company and a property management company, I used to invite my landlords and investors, in fact, anybody that listened to my radio show, and we would play. We got like 5 different games, board games of the cash flow system, and we would set up 5 tables in my office. At each table, 4 people would sit there and they would play, and until there's a winner in the game, and that usually took a couple hours. And at the end of the game, then we would talk about why somebody won and why somebody lost, and it was incredibly insightful, and you can learn. So if you have never played the cash flow game, you can even actually play it online now. But I want to tell you that it's a great game. You should have it in your house. Play it with your kids. By the way, they even have a cash flow game for kids, at an earlier age where it's kind of simplified a little bit more. But what we're talking about right here is very, very appropriate and relevant to that game. So back to the reading. The sad truth about most financial advisors and pension fund managers is that they are not investors. Most are employees in the E quadrant. One reason why so many government pensions and union pensions are in trouble is because these employees are not trained to be investors. Most do not have any real-life financial education. To make matters worse, most financial experts advise uneducated investors to invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Why do these financial experts, employees in the E quadrant or salespeople in the S quadrant, masquerading as investors in the I quadrant, advise you to do that? It's because they get paid, not by how much money they make for you, but how much money you turn over to them for the long term. That's why most asset management companies charge a percentage of the value of your portfolio. That means that they're constantly taking a piece of your portfolio. And they'll even argue and say that the better you do, the better they do. But remember, no risk. They just might make less, but they'll always make money. So the longer your money is parked with them, the more they get paid. The reality is that real investors do not park their money. They move their money. It's a strategy known as the velocity of money. A true investor's money is always moving, acquiring new assets, then moving on to acquire even more assets. Only amateurs park their money. I'm not saying that 401k plans are bad, although I would never have one. For me, they are too expensive, too risky, too tax inefficient, and unfair to the investor. I'm saying there are better ways to invest, but they require financial education. So what is the best investment? The average investor does not know the difference between investing for cash flow and investing for capital gains. Most investors invest for capital gains, hoping and praying the price of their stock or home goes up. As long as you have more cash flowing in than flowing out, your investment is a good investment. Keeping in mind that it's not the asset class that makes a person rich or poor. For example, when a person asks, is real estate a good investment? I reply, I don't know. Are you a good investor? Or if they ask, are stocks a good investment? Again, my answer is the same. I don't know. Are you a good investor? My point is that it is never the investment or the asset class that is important. Success or failure, wealth or poverty depends solely on how smart the investor is. A smart investor will make millions in the stock market. An amateur will lose millions. Tragically, most people do not think learning to invest is important. That is why most people believe investing is risky and turn their money over to experts, most of whom are not really investors, but salespeople who make money whether the investor makes money or loses money. So now let's shift into the 5 levels or types of investors found in the I quadrant. Level 1, zero financial intelligence level. Sadly, in America, once the richest country in the world, over 50% of the population is at the bottom level of the I quadrant. Simply said, they have nothing to invest. There are many people who make a lot of money who fall into this category. They earn a lot and spend more than they earn. I have a friend who looks very rich. He has a good job as a real estate broker, a beautiful wife, and 3 kids in private school. They live in a beautiful house overlooking the Pacific Ocean in San Diego. He and his wife drive expensive European cars. When his son and daughters were old enough, they too drove expensive cars. They looked rich, but what they had was bad debt. They looked rich, but were poorer than most poor people. Now they're homeless. When the real estate market crashed, they crashed. They were no longer able to pay the interest on all the debt they had accumulated. When we were younger, this same friend made a lot of money. Unfortunately, it was his low financial intelligence level, 0, that caused him to be a 0 over the long run. In fact, he is so deeply in debt that he is really a sub-zero investor. Like many people, everything he buys loses value and costs him money. Nothing he buys makes him richer. And I just want to pause one quick second. Does anybody have any thoughts? Raise your hand if you wouldn't. And I don't know, Fernando, are people able to unmute themselves? Let's open up for a little bit of conversation before we go to level 2. And I'll also have a little bit of a comment about investors and real estate professionals as a whole. Anyone want to raise their hand?
Eric, good morning. I think everyone now has access to open their camera and microphones. Great
Beautiful.
morning. Wow.
Great
Th-
morning.
This
Thank
this
you.
this this topic right here that you just talked about, which is, looking rich but huge debt and everything these folks buy is depreciating assets. I've
Correct.
seen that happen. I personally have experienced that where you want to have luxurious things. And before you know it, an automobile is an amazing and an aggressive depreciating asset that has no value. And I've experienced that, driven cars that are pretty expensive when you get them out of the lot. A few years later, they're worth nothing. Well, I see Deborah's got her hand up. So great stuff. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Fernando. And it's so very true, and automobiles, everybody knows is a depreciating asset, but yet people still recognize it as a status symbol because they don't know whether the car is owned free and clear, which the wealthy people might do. In fact, probably not, whether it's leased or whether it's heavily financed. So uh, that's one great example of people who rely and stay on that note than others. So I know that was it Deborah that had her hand up first?
I'll just jump
Yes.
in yeah, thank you. I'll just jump in real quick. Thank you, Eric, for reading. The comment about the cars, of course, if you buy a classic car, you're probably in better shape, right? You have an old Camaro or Corvette or something or any of those cars that appreciate in value. And then I just wanted to make a comment. I put a funny statement in the chat. And I know this is Rich Dad, Poor Dad we're reading, right?
We're reading the cash flow quadrants, which would be considered the second in the series of Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah. As you can see, I've been out of touch with the group. So glad to be back this morning. So
Welcome back.
yeah, thank you. Disregard what I said about Mr. Buffett. I know the author. So thank you. Please continue. This is very interesting.
Yeah, and the comment in about New York, New Jersey. In fact, New York is about ready to, in my opinion, make a huge mistake in their elections, and it has a lot to do with financial illiteracy. And by the way, your comment about the car, the reason, there's two reasons why someone would buy a classic Camaro, right? One is because nostalgia. That's just what they want. It's a pleasure or reward for whatever reason. Or a person who, again, has financial literacy, researched the investment value of certain cars, and then will buy the car and either keep it stored, preserve it like an asset, or just barely drive it, enjoy it, but know that they don't want to do anything that will depreciate that asset. So one is doing it just for purely pleasure, and one is doing it for as an investor. There's a guy that I follow sometimes on YouTube, and all he does is buy super luxury cars. We're talking about cars in the six-figure range. And today he's made a lot of money because, to your point, he buys one of those super luxury cars a couple years after they were brand new. So the first drop in depreciation happens, but certain cars, certain models, certain series of production were either very limited or highly sought after. And then he drives this super car for a year and then sells it again for at least as much as what he paid for it. So he basically drove a supercar for free. Again, what's that all boil down to? Financial literacy. So thanks for that comment, Deborah. Jameson. Good morning.
Let's see. Do I show up on the picture? That I don't know what it looks like. I must see myself.
You looks like you're floating in outer space.
All right. Well, great. Well, good morning, Eric. Thank you for reading this. It's a great read. It's really important to see how the perspective of someone that's played the game, cash flow game. I was trying to find that anyway, and understands from the monopoly side. And it was an interesting tool back in what was that, the '60s, when Rich Dad was teaching Robert Kiyosaki about that. That was the only thing out, but it was. It's one of those classic games that no matter what century you're in, it's going to be a great game to learn how to work with financial intelligence. And thank you so much for reading. One of the things we can go back to chapter 4. Robert Kiyosaki talked about getting your advice from not an advisor like a banker or an attorney or an accountant for financial intelligence, but to get a mentor. And he talks about that here again with Warren Buffett. Talked about how he's talking about if you have a salesperson or someone that you go to with in Wall Street, you're going to go up there in a Rolls Royce, and they're going to come
via the subway.
And then he says here, if people don't, if people do not have sound financial Rolls Royce too, if the advisor is a salesman or a con man or a fool or a genius, so that comes back on to the investor. They have to have enough financial intelligence to be able to have financial interest. And the comment back on the person that looks very rich, that reminds me of a sports athlete. They may have some money for a minute, but they don't have any cash flow. So it's literally sifting right through their hands into the hands of the rich people that have the financial intelligence so that they can actually use money effectively. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. Anyone else? Here's the thing, right? And I made the comment about interviewing the people that help you to handle your money. I 100% agree. In fact, it just made me think whether I shouldn't add that as my fourth core belief, because I highly, highly, highly believe that everyone should have a mentor. In fact, I'm always looking for the next mentor that can take me from where I'm at to a higher level, and I don't even know all the time what that higher level is or what it looks like. I just know that there are people who are operating at a higher level, and that's who you want to be around. The old saying. And here's a quick question. How many people take inventory from time to time and say, because there's a saying that says that we are the average of the five, our net worth, our income is the average of the top 5 people that you spend the most time with. So every once in a while, you got to take a look at who do you spend your time with? Who are the top 5 people? And then ask yourself, what are they? What is their net worth? Are they a positive net worth and growing, or are they not a positive net worth? Because their influence is definitely going to rub off on you. Same thing with income. And I'll tell you, it can be a very eye-opening experience. I do this, by the way. In fact, 8 years ago, when I was doing this, I realized that there was one particularly toxic person in my circle that was constantly A, dragging down the average, B, not on the same wavelength, not a positive person. And sometimes those people could be a spouse, could be a family member, and sometimes you gotta change who those 5 people are that are the closest to you and around you. So, P.S., isn't that part of financial literacy? Understanding the impact and the influences that are around us. So let's go back to the reading. If there's anyone who has any comments, please raise your hand or drop them in the uh, in the chat. And yes,
Hey, Eric?
yes.
Some reason I can't raise my hand on this machine. Anyway, this one was really powerful for me. I appreciate you reading it for sure. It reminded me that the life of your finances is, if you don't know the rules of the finances, especially if you're just not even aware of them, because who's going to teach you them, you're going to miss the boat that you're looking for. You're just going to flat out not see it. You in general, you have a goal that you want from all your finances. I want to make enough money to live and do this and have fun. But oftentimes we don't ask ourselves, is this purchase going to make me just feel good, or is it going to help me reach my goal? In other words, a big fancy car might not be the right thing to put that money in. It might be a piece of real estate or gold or something of that nature. That'll make you feel a lot better when you're 75, like me, as opposed to a big fancy car. I don't really care about a car anymore for some reason. But they used to have this saying, me, myself, and I. Well, there's another person that takes the place of I. It's me, myself, and Uncle Sam, the tax man. If you don't know the rules of the taxes, you're losing again, because he's going to come in and yank 35% of it or more, even if you have a good investment. Some of these investments have rules also, and you can get on the wrong side of the progress and they can take over 100% of what you got. That's my comment.
And wasn't it ironic, Ron, that they were saying that smart investors make more money and pay less taxes? You would think that as you grow up, and traditional, S quadrant, E quadrant thinking is, the more money you make, the more taxes you're going to have to pay. And that's why there are actually people out there that don't want to make more money because they're going to have to pay more tax. Now remember, even after taxes, if you make more money, you have more money. Yes, you pay taxes, but that's a financial literacy issue, not whether it's smart or not to make more money. So it's ironic to me. And again, who are the people that surround you? How much are they paying, very high taxes, or in proportion to what they earn, are they paying very low taxes? And this week I was talking to somebody who is in fact an expert in the field of trusts, and they were talking about how it's all about how you position your assets, all how you hold your assets, and then how you flow the cash flow from the assets on whether or not it's subject to the regular income tax. You see, Dr. Parker often says, there's a money game out there, and he's not the only one. There is a money game going out there. But the good thing about a game is that a game has rules. It's not anarchy, there's rules. The IRS code has rules. And the people that understand those rules and play the rules to their favor pay less taxes, break no rules, pay less taxes, and keep more of their money. And as they were talking about before, money is always in motion. It needs to be, right? So whether it's, the money is in real estate, which is constantly generating rent and constantly appreciating in value. Same thing with a business, constantly generating cash flow, building up its sales and exposure. So great point, Ron. And that's why the importance probably of anything else is the concept of financial literacy, being aware. So let's go to level 2 now of the investors. And level 2, the savers, are losers level. Many people believe it is smart to save money. The problem is that today, money is no longer money. Today, people are saving counterfeit dollars, money that can be created at the speed of light, i.e. printed. In 1971, President Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard and money became debt. Let that sink in for a second, because most people don't understand it. If you look at your dollar bill, anyone, it says Federal Reserve note. Note. What is a note? A note is a debt. And I'm not going to get into the particulars about that, but understand that the US dollar is evidence of debt. The primary reason why prices have risen since 1971 is simply because the United States now has the power to print money to pay its bills. Today, and by the way, people don't have that privilege. The US government uniquely can do that. And they're poor managers of the money that they print. Today, savers are the biggest losers. Since 1971, the US dollar has lost 95% of its value when compared to gold. It will not take another 40 years to lose the remaining 5%. Remember, in 1971, gold was $35 an ounce. 40 years later, gold was $1,400 an ounce. That's a massive loss of purchasing power for the paper dollar. The problem grows worse as the US national debt escalates into the trillions of dollars, and the US continues to print more counterfeit money. As the Federal Reserve Bank and central banks throughout the world print trillions of dollars at high speed, every printed dollar means higher taxes and more inflation. In spite of this fact, millions of people continue to believe saving money is smart. It used to be smart when money was money. The biggest market in the world is the bond market. Bond is another word for savings. There are many different types of bonds for different types of savers. There are US Treasury bonds, corporate bonds, municipal bonds, and junk bonds. For years, it was assumed that the US government bonds and government municipal bonds were safe. Then the financial crisis of 2007 began, and as you may know, the crisis was caused by mortgage bonds, such as mortgage-backed securities, or MBS, also known as derivatives. Millions of these mortgage bonds were made up of subprime mortgages, which were loans to subprime or high-risk borrowers. You may recall that some of those borrowers had no income and no job, yet they were buying homes they could never pay for. The Wall Street bankers took these subprime loans and packaged them into bonds, magically got this subprime bond market labeled as prime, and then sold them to institution banks, governments, even foreign governments, and individual investors. To me, this is fraud, but that is the banking system. Once the subprime borrower could no longer pay the interest on their mortgages, those MBS bonds began blowing up all over the world. Interestingly, it was Warren Buffett's firm, Moody's, that blessed these subprime mortgages as AAA prime debt, the highest rating for bonds. Today, many people blame the big banks such as Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan for the crisis. Yet if anyone should be blamed for this crisis, it should be Warren Buffett. He's a smart man, and he knew what he was doing. Moody's was blessing rotting dog meat as grade A prime beef. That is criminal. The problem is that these subprime bonds are now causing ripple effects all over the world. Today, countries such as Ireland and Greece are in serious trouble, unable to pay the interest on their bonds. In the United States, governments and municipalities are going broke, unable to pay the interest on their bonds. In 2011, millions of individuals, many retirees, pension funds, governments, and banks are in trouble as the bond market proves how unsafe bonds can be. On top of that, rising inflation makes bonds even riskier, an even riskier investment, which is why savers who only know how to save are losers. For example, if a bond is paying 3% interest and inflation is running at 5%, the value of a 3% bond crashes, wiping out the investor's value. And what they do is they have to discount the bond so that it also generates a 5% return based on its coupon rate. So China could be the biggest loser of all. China holds $1 trillion of US bonds. Every time the US government devalues the dollar by printing more money and issuing more bonds, the value of China's $1 trillion investment in the United States goes down. If China stops buying US government bonds, the world economy will stop and crash. Millions of retirees, just like China, retirees in need of a steady income after retirement, believed government bonds were safe. Today, as governments, big and small, go bust and inflation rises, retirees are finding out that savers who saved money in bonds are losers. Municipal bonds are IOUs issued by states, cities, hospitals, schools, and other public institutions. One advantage of municipal bonds is that they are tax-free income. The problem is that municipal bonds are not risk-free. Millions of municipal bond investors are now finding out that the municipal bonds they invested in are in serious trouble. In the United States, more than $3 trillion is invested in municipal bonds. It is estimated that 2/3 of those bonds are now at risk because these public institutions are broke. If more money is not pumped in, the United States could implode from the center as states, cities, hospitals, and schools begin to default, just as subprime homeowners defaulted and stopped paying on their mortgages. The bond market is the biggest market in the world, bigger than the stock market or the real estate market. And the main reason it is the biggest is because most people are savers, level 2 investors. Unfortunately, after 1971, when the rules of money changed, savers became the biggest losers, even if they saved money by investing in bonds. And I'm just going to take a quick peek. We're on 103, where the chapter ends. We might have to stop mid-chapter because there's a lot of pages and we're coming up at the 10:30 hour. So, you know, one of the things that I like to say on the radio show is that you cannot save your way into retirement. You have to invest your way, which, by the way, plays right into the concept here. The best quadrant to be in is the I quadrant, and the cash flow quadrant is all about understanding why it's important to move from the left side of the quadrant to the right side where you get leverage to have a business or a system that generates cash flow and have investments that grow and eventually also create cash flow, enough cash flow for you to be financially independent. So we'll finish up with the level 3, which will leave a lot of people in suspense as to what is level 5 and what we want to do. But the bond market is the biggest market in the world, bigger than the stock market or the real estate market. The main reason is it's the biggest is that most people are savers, level 2 investors. Unfortunately, after 1971, i.e. inflation started, when rules of money changed, savers became the biggest losers, even if they saved money by investing in what were supposedly safe bonds. Remember that savers, bondholders, and most people who save money in a retirement plan are people who park their money investing for the long term, which, by the way, advisors keep telling you, oh, we got to invest for the long term. And I agree. You got to think about the long term, but remember, velocity of money. While professional investors move their money, professional investors invest their money in an asset, get their money back without selling the asset, and move their money on to buy more assets. Example, you buy a real estate property, it grows in value. Then you refinance it, take part of the equity out, buy another property without selling the first property. Now you have 2 assets appreciating, 2 assets creating cash flow. And that is why savers who park their money are the biggest losers. Level 3, I'm too busy level. This is the investor that is too busy to learn about investing. Many investors at this level are highly educated people who are simply too busy with their careers, family, and other interests and vacations. Hence, they prefer to remain financially naive and turn their money over to someone else to manage for them. This is the level that most 401k, IRA, and even rich investors are at. They simply turn their money over to an expert and then hope and pray their expert is really an expert. Soon after the financial crisis broke in 2007, many affluent people found out that their trusted expert was not an expert at all, and even worse, could not be trusted. In a matter of months, trillions of dollars of wealth vaporized as real estate and stock markets began to crash. Panicking, those investors called their trusted advisors and begged for salvation. A few rich investors found out that their trusted advisors were extremely sophisticated con men running elaborate Ponzi schemes. A Ponzi scheme is an investment scheme where the investors are paid off with new investors' money. The scheme works well as long as there are new investors adding new money to pay off the old investors. In the United States, Bernie Madoff became famous because he made off with billions in rich people's money. There are legal Ponzi schemes and illegal Ponzi schemes, but P.S., they're all Ponzi schemes. Social Security is a legal Ponzi scheme, as is the stock market. In both instances, the scheme works as long as new money flows into the scheme. If new money stops flowing in, the scheme, be it Madoff scheme, Social Security, or Wall Street, collapses. The problem with the level 3 investor, the I'm too busy investor, is that the person learns nothing if they lose their money. They have no experience except a bad experience. All they can do is blame their advisor, the market, or the government. It's hard to learn from one's mistakes if the person does not know what mistakes were made. So I'll probably let me at least pause and see about any comments about level 1, 2, and 3. And P.S. What level do you think that you're on? Are you a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, a level 4, the I'm a professional level? This is the do-it-yourself investor in the S quadrant. And then, hey, it's an open book test, so I'm going to cheat a little bit here. Number 5, the capitalist level. And this is the richest people in the world. The level 5 investor, a capitalist, is a business owner from the B quadrant investing in the I quadrant. Ultimately, that's where we want to go. So any final comments as we wrap up today's reading? Any ahas? I'd like to see if there were any ahas.
Mr. William,
Yes.
Gerald Parker, how you doing this morning, sir?
Dr. Parker, a great morning to you, my friend.
Outstanding read. What an eye-opening experience from your reading. I mean, these guys just kind of pull back the curtain and let us really see what's going on. This whole idea that money exists when it really doesn't. You talked about Ponzi schemes and all that. That's the big game, right? That they play. And if we don't learn the rules of this game and learn how to play the game, we're going to continue to lose. But it's all by design. It was never set up for you and I to win. And I tell you, it's just fascinating. These guys are geniuses. When I say these guys, meaning those who control the wealth in this country, they're genius in this whole scheme that they put together. And right down to Social Security. I mean, the Wall Street, you mentioned it, all of it. We've got to figure this thing out. We've got to learn how to get in this game and play it to win.
100% agree. And here's the interesting thing in this whole story. Right? This is a best-selling book. It's public information. All the concepts that we've been talking about are right in plain sight. Let's talk about Social Security for a second, because as long as I have been an adult, I have heard that Social Security is on the brink of bankruptcy and may no longer exist. But like the Ponzi scheme description that they're talking about, because there's new money flowing in, and that is what pays the current retirees. So everybody that's in late retirement is probably okay, living at a subpar level, but okay. Our kids, their kids, that's questionable. In fact, in my personal financial planning, Social Security isn't even factored in. It's extra money, in my opinion, gas money or fund money. But think about this. Why did Social Security last, almost my 30 plus year career? Because they have slowly moved the date of being able to collect Social Security, and they're talking about moving it again so that they get more people still required to pay in. Think about that. Now, pretty soon they're going to say, you can't get Social Security till 70, and you got to contribute all the way to 70 instead of 62 or 67. And then make it harder for people to collect farther out where, quite frankly, there's less people even alive. All, as you said, by design. I always say in the radio show, Wall Street's in on it, Washington's in on it, and so are big business, who, by the way, lobby and control the changes in the IRS. So it's a very important point that you're making. And I think if there was one theme that keeps coming up is the importance of financial literacy, the absolute importance of financial literacy.
No doubt about it, sir.
Go ahead, Dr. Parker.
No, I was just going to say that, I mean, they rigged the game in their favor. And these are hard lessons that we must learn and hurry and learn because, again, as you say, they pushed the age back even further. Now you've got more people paying in, but now you've got to work until you die, basically, to even touch any sort of retirement. And then when it comes to Social Security, we know it was designed as a supplement. Basically, it was never enough to carry you, never will be. Eric, you talk all the time about the average the average Social Security payment to someone who's committed 30 or 40 years of their life already. And that's not enough to sustain any quality of life. But again, all by design. This is quite amazing, my friend. We have really got to go to work and take seriously about getting our financial life in order.
And the problem isn't that it's impossible. In fact, it's absolutely very possible to retire financially independent. You see, when you understand the definition of financially independent, means that you have more money coming in than you spend per month. And people spend at different levels. People are comfortable at different levels. Everybody wants something that's fantastic, but what people really are happy with is one number. And think about this. If the average income in the United States today is around 50 some thousand dollars, it's anywhere between 50 and 70,000, depending on who your source is. But let's use the lower number, 50,000. That means every 10 years you make 500,000 in a 40-year career, which, by the way, is now antiquated. That means you will make 500,000 times 4, which is $2 million. The average person, I'm not even talking about high-level professionals, white-collar professionals. I'm talking about the average person in America will make $2 million. That $2 million will run through their accounts in their lifetimes. But usually it'll run all the way through their accounts and they'll have nothing to show for it. Why is it that the average renter today retires with $5,000 to $9,000 in an account after having made $2 million? Why is it that even homeowners, and they have such a leg up, that a homeowner has a $280,000 net worth at retirement, which is a lot better than the 5 or 9,000, but still, you can't live off of $280,000 for the rest of your life. Even if you got 10%, that's $28,000 a year. That's less than $2,500 a month. And here's the thing. If we start early, people understand the magic of compound interest, right? If you start early and is insignificant, how many people just on tonight's or today's Zoom how many people have had either money deducted from their paycheck and soon you don't miss it, or you disciplined, put money away and design it to save. You know, some of you are familiar with the diversified cash flow account. You set it up, put $100 a month into that account. Pretty soon you won't miss that $100, but what that money will do over time. I'm reading a book right now by Mel Abraham, who's a very well-respected business author, and he was talking about and one example that struck me, he's you know, an older guy, CPA, very astute business person, who, by the way, wasn't always that way, learned the hard way by losing everything in bad investments because he wasn't, you know, literate and disciplined. But he learned from that experience, and he was talking to somebody, a younger employee in his company, who was talking about his friend who just bought a $5,000 watch. And he goes like, you know, that's interesting. You know, do you have a 5,000? He said, no, I would never do that. And then he said, well, why did your friend buy a $5,000 watch? Because he thinks it's cool, right? It's a status symbol, just like the luxury cars. And then Mel goes on to say that when you invest something over a long period of time, so if you started investing right out of school, 40 years later, the investment could be 70 times greater. So the $5,000 could be anywhere from $80,000-$90,000 to over $300,000 in value if it were invested. And very rarely, my friends, will a $5,000 watch turn into a $100,000 watch. For the most part, it's worth less. So, you know, the other, you know, big con, and when you go to a jewelry store and they call it an investment, I have never bought jewelry and then years later been able to turn it in for more money than what I originally paid for it. And so where we get our financial information is just as important as having financial information. But, you know, hang around people. You know, that's one of the reasons why I like this group here. These are people who are thinking positively, who are going ahead and learning more, dedicating, you know, a piece of your Saturday morning to becoming financially more literate. And P.S., you can now start to look around and see people that might be interesting to make part of your circle. It may sound cold, but think about the 5 people that you spend the most time with, and could you upgrade some of those? That's all I got for today. Anybody else have any other
You're hitting
comments?
pretty hard. You're hitting pretty hard this morning, Mr. Wilder. That's what I'm saying. You're knocking them out. Hey, but guys, it's real, and we've got to really take a hard look at where we are and where we desire to be. As Eric said, and it never fails. You are going to be no further along than you know, the 5 people closest to you, and take a real hard look at your surroundings, and maybe it is time to do some upgrading. But Eric, it still amazes me how they are able to pull all of this off in plain sight, right before our eyes.
That's why they don't teach financial literacy in classrooms. And if you think about it, they don't teach it. When should you learn? I mean, I share a lot of this stuff and we play the cash flow games. You know, my kids have grown up seeing this, but they didn't get it in school. They're leagues ahead of their friends, most of them, that don't have that same experience. And if you think about it even further, even in college, right? Institutions of higher learning, do they teach you how to balance a checkbook, how to manage debt, how to pay down debt? No. They teach you how to run a business, you know, granted, income statements and balance sheet, but never do they say, by the way, apply this to your personal life too, because that's the secret to a business lasting, right? Nobody ever went broke on positive cash flow. Yet most people live on negative cash flow and credit cards. It's not taught in our schools. And I hate to say this, you know, our country is next year is going to celebrate its 250th birthday. 250th birthday, which means, right, that these independent, originally, you know, back in the old days, everybody was a small business. It wasn't until the industrial age and the industrial machine that said, well, we need employees and we need to design an educational system that produces employees. So our educational system is designed for the E quadrant. Where do you go to learn to be in the B quadrant? Business school, in many cases. But how about the I quadrant? Where do you go? And it's all privately taught. So that the name of the game, not only to surround yourself with the right 5 people, A, but B, make sure that you put yourself into access to all of the tools that are available, and make sure you plug into the mentors or the organizations that are privately teaching individuals about financial literacy and how to become a good investor. And that's one of the nice things, you know, that I like about MWR, is that it's focused on teaching people how to become an investor, a business owner, and subsequently an investor. And they even talk about different ways to create systems for generating cash flow. So I thought that was all I had. I had a little bit more, but I'm done.
I'd like to make 2 real quick comments if I can.
Yes, Ron.
I think I've already said this on one of our meetings, but I'll say it again because it's worthwhile paying attention to it. Many years ago, I was walking through the living room. The TV was on, and one of the talk show people were interviewing Bill Gates. And their question to him was, what do you think is the one thing that has contributed the most to your wealth? He thought for a minute, and he said, a working knowledge of the tax code. That stopped me. I even had to sit down and think about that one for a minute. And then the second part of it is, during one of the debates with Trump and Hillary, they were talking about Trump's taxes, how he paid little taxes and made so much money. Well, his comeback was right along that same line. He said, the government created the tax code. I just use it.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you think about the structure of that tax code, it's designed to benefit those who are in business. That's why what we do is so important, that we need to be in business, at minimum, a home-based business, so you can qualify for the tax deductions that your business legitimately has, and you leave it on the table. That's a great deal of money, but they're designed to benefit those who own business. So we know this. You can't beat them, so let's join them.
You know, and as I think about this, imagine if I invited you, Gerald, as I love to, out to eat, and I said, Gerald, we can go to an A restaurant or a B restaurant. Which one would you rather go to? Right? Nobody would think twice. You know, if you're paying, or if the cost is the same, let's go to the A restaurant, right?
Right.
Same thing with a college or a school. Same thing, you know, if you could have an A car or a B car, and it doesn't depreciate, you would always take the A. We talk about this a lot on my radio show, is that there are 2 tax codes. In fact, there are 2 tax codes. There's the left side of the quadrant tax code, and there's the right side of the quadrant tax code, believe it or not. There is the quadrant for employees, and then there is the quadrant for business owners. And that's where the magic happens. That's the most tax advantage. So if you had the choice, think about this now, and imagine if we could teach our kids that you have a choice. You can either go to the A quadrant, or to the A side, which is the leverage side, business and investor, or you can become an employee, which is the B route, the A route or the B route. And nobody says that clearly, as simplified as that, when they're telling you, like, what do you want to do in college? Well, I want to study literature, right? And you know where that gets you. It's fun. It's beautiful. Or do you go the engineering route? Or do you go the business school route? Or do you go the entrepreneur route? Jameson.
Real quick, one of the interesting things that the tax code is with the tax deductions. You get to invest all the money into your business through the tax code that you can, and then pay whatever's left that you can't use legally through the tax code. So you either you turn your money over to the government to invest in the government, or you get to invest all you can into your business and then give the government what's left over. That's what I like about the tax code.
Yep. Yep. There's another great book. I don't know if any of you have read. It's called The 4-Hour Work Week. And this is by Tim Ferriss. If you haven't read it, it is another life-changing book. It is a very impactful. And basically what the book is all about is that why, and you see the background here. I have a coaching program called the 5-Year Career, because I don't believe in the 40-year career anymore. I don't subscribe to the 40-40-40 formula. And in Tim Ferriss's book, he talks about how to create a system, and you can do that in any profession, but to create a system that works without you being there, so that you spend 4 hours a week tinkering and tweaking and managing, but the system does the work the rest of the time. And one of the things that he also talks about is to learn the rules of the game. Okay. And he primarily is talking about business. But do you know that he went and he won a karate or a wrestling tournament, and he's not a particularly good wrestler. He learned the rules, and in 6 months, by using technicalities in the rules, and by the way, the champion that was defeated was not happy because he was defeated on a technicality, not on skill. And knowledge and skill will beat force and brute every time. So he also won a tango contest in Argentina, the capital of tango and the flamingo dancing. Why? Because he learned the rules of the judges and then won on points. And that is what I'm making a point of, is the IRS. If you learn the rules, from our conversation today, technically, if all your investments, and this is not a recommendation, in fact, obviously Robert Kiyosaki recommends against it, but technically, if you saved and invested your money your whole life and then put it into something like a tax-free municipal bond, and let's say that you had $10 million at 10%, so you're making $1 million a year now, and you'd be paying 0 taxes. Now, find a different investment besides municipal bonds, but there are investments out there that you can earn massive amounts of money, pay 0 in taxes, correctly, ethically, legally, and yet there will be people out there that will criticize and say, oh, look at that guy. He makes all that money and he doesn't pay his fair share of taxes. That's not true. He's paying 100% of his fair share of the taxes based on the rules of the game, the IRS code. And again, one last kudos to the folks with the MWR affiliation, is that you have on speed dial unlimited access. And I'll tell you, I use it all the time. I ask questions. I do what ifs with them, because when you have access to the information and access to real experts that specialize in one area of the other, you get the advantage. So on that note, great book, great chapter. We'll continue. We'll pick up on level 4 next week. And thanks, because we stayed 19 minutes over again. So thank you again for joining. Tell a friend about this. Bring a friend. Bring somebody from your inner circle of 5 people, so that you can elevate the whole circle. And wouldn't that be an advantage? On that note, I'm gonna pass the baton and the microphone over to you, Mr. Ramirez.
Wow, jeez. You elevated my confidence in seeing, how awesome uh how awesome we do when we learn, and the people that you surround yourself either make you or break you. So today I definitely felt like I was touching the highest mountain peak. Thank you, Eric, so very much for this incredible reading of this morning. So I'm assuming everyone feels the same way. I took a lot of notes. And you're right, the people that are closest to you make you or break you. And everyone that is here, I know for a fact we're all making each other up, get to the mountain top as soon as possible. So on that note, there you go. I got that from you, Eric. On that note, we're gonna take a little break to do the invites and bring more folks. We're gonna have an incredible conversation this morning. Our excited, enthusiastic leader, Dr. G.W. Parker, is going to be doing that conversation. I don't want anybody to miss out on this, so I'm doing my invites already. So make sure you do your invites as well. So we're going to get started in the next 10 minutes. Let me pause.